So now we're ready to split this up into UV shells and start mapping it to our trim sheet. So if we select this as is at the moment, we can see it's just a rat's nest and a mess. Now this is a really simple procedure. It's so easy to do, and hopefully I'll get to show you a few little techniques, so make sure that you follow along with this, and hopefully we'll come to some areas that need a little bit of working through. But getting used to this UV toolkit, which I have used all sorts of different UV unwrapping tools in my career, trying desperately to find one that's just easy and straightforward. I've always hated the UV process until I came back to Maya and started using Maya's own inbuilt UV toolkit. Alright then, so I'm going to start with something simple. I'm just going to start with this front panel here, which I know that I want to be a painted panel. So, but first of all, I'm actually going to grab everything and just do a create camera base, so we have it a little bit more neat in here, and then I'll do an arrange and layout there so I can see these in scene. And we want to set our textile density here as well. So if we go to transform and go down to the get and size, we need to set our map size. So our map size is going to be 2048, and our textile density is going to be, we'll do it 1024. So we need to do 10.24. We select our UV faces, we can set that. So that is now set to 1024. So if everything of this scale in the scene has a size of 1024, so if we just kind of go like that, which we know is 1/4 of our map, because our trim sheet is 4x4, so 2x2 is 1024 if our trim sheet is 2K. So we just go like that. So we know this is a 1K map, and so that we should have that kind of detail mainly across our scene here. So if we put that UV mapping on there and put it on there, we can see that aligns pretty much identical size wise. Of course, this is all stretched because we've not unwrapped it yet, but that's kind of what we want to stick to. So we want to stick this to here, and then we can try and keep it as close to that as possible. First of all, I'm going to grab this front face. And before I start breaking these off, I'm just going to explain the way I've set up my scene here. So I like to have my UV editor toolkit. When you open yours, it might be floating, and you might have your toolkit on the edge there. Now, if you don't have this toolkit, if you've lost it somehow, then you can go up to tools here and you can go show UV toolkit, and then we can grab this UV editor, and we can just, if you just hold it over between these two panels, you should get a long blue line. So that means you can just dock that there. And same with the toolkit, I'm going to dock it in with my outliner there. So let's break this front panel off first, because I know this is going to be a painted colour. And we can just select the faces, and then if you shift right click in here, we can go create UV shell, and that just breaks off that panel. And then because this is just a flat piece, we can go create normal based, and that will just flatten that out. And then we want to make sure we keep it the correct textile density, so we can come here and hit set, and that'll just keep that the right size. And we might want to scale it to fit the little panels, but for now that will do just fine. Now to see what we're going to be aligning this up with, because we've got this texture applied to this already, right now we've got this grid set here. But if we go over to this image, we can actually get the image that is applied to this, and we can select that image. We have to turn the grid off. We can select which one of them we want. So at the moment we've got the base color and normal set up, so we can flip between these, and that gives us the ability to be able to see them scenes really neatly. Whereas if we just go to the color, we're not going to be able to see them scenes, but we can identify which part we want that on. So at the moment I'm just going to keep this here because this is going to be painted. Now we need to go back to the normal and figure out where this can best fit. Now I probably need to make an additional panel so that I don't need to stretch this, because I would like to have a bevel not just on the top and bottom but each side as well. Now I don't have anything like that here at the moment. I think it'll best fit into here. It's going to be a little bit stretched, I think, which I don't really want. Now what I could do is just grab these edges here and move this down a little bit. So make sure that I've selected all of verts there, and just bring that down. Now you can do this without affecting the UVs. So if you wanted to just line it up to a panel loop that's already there, what you can do is if you go into here, you can click on preserve UVs. So that's the tool settings, preserve UVs, or again, get used to using the marking menu. If you hold shift and control and right click, you can come down to here and you can tick on preserve UVs, and that will allow you just to move stuff. Not in every direction. If you end up going over another UV in your scene, it will actually error out. but if you can slide it without crossing over UVs in your scene, then it'll let you do that. And we can just bring that down to that panel loop there. Now we still need to stretch this a little bit, I think. So I'm going to grab the bottom of this. I'm going to switch over to the normal so I can see that other panel loop, and I'm going to squash this up a little bit here. So I need to go UVs rather than vertexes, and then move that to match that panel. And you want to get this as accurate in between them two pieces as possible. And we can see that in our scene there. So you can see that little panel bevel at the edge of that there. Okay, so there is no panel edge on there, which I would have liked. So I think I do need to cut this up into boxes so I can more neatly apply that. But we'll come back to do that later anyway. For now, we can just fill out the rest of this. So again, I want this one to be chrome. So I'm going to go to face, select that middle one, and then control greater than, just grow that selection. Or we can go to wireframe and just select over that whole thing. And I just want this to all be chrome. Okay, so again, we can go here, we can go create, camera based, or we can go right click, create UV shell. We can move this off to the side, and then we can select one of them edges. It doesn't matter what's in the background here because it's all hidden anyway by that outer sheath. So we can shift right click and cut that edge so that this loop can then be unfolded. We can click unfold and we get this. Now we can cut this inner section out here. So I'm just going to cut them there. Shift right click, cut, grab that UV shell, just bring that out here. And I'm also going to cut them edges just so that I can flatten out a little bit more. So if we unfold this bit first and then orient, and we want to make sure everything stays as straight as we can possibly make it. And then we can unfold this and orient that. And that is pretty straight, but I'm also going to just hit straighten UVs there. Now you can see it's collapsed these ones down, which I don't want. So what I am going to do is just go to UV. I'm going to select these UVs here. I'm going to straighten them, and then I'm going to select these UVs and then straighten them. And that way I avoid collapsing that down, which we don't want. So now we've got this nice straight piece, and we can take it over to one of these pieces, which is chrome. So again, if I flip back to my base color, I can identify a chrome piece. Now this is quite big, so we could do with a much bigger chrome piece. Again, this is why planning is difficult. You know, I should have maybe paid a little bit more attention to this. Okay, so now this piece is a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to actually make a panel. I'm going to split one of these up so that we get something more appropriate for this. So what I'm actually going to do is take this edge here that we've done and just bring this back up so that it more closely represents one of the thinner panels. And then with this, let's just optimize it. Okay, we're going to take this, and over this chrome here, I'm going to scale this down. Now it's chrome, it's not going to have much detail, so we're not going to see much squashing or stretching at all because it's basically just a shiny metal. But we're going to jump back into the normal map, and I'm going to align this here. Now I want to be able to start selecting just top edges. Now if I try and do that at the moment when this map is starting to get busy, we're going to be selecting things behind there. So what we can do is, because this is a trim sheet, it doesn't matter where it's placed on this scene, right? It doesn't matter that it's not in this UV1 box. It can be in UV2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. So to give us a little bit more breathing room, what we can do is we can come up here to images, and we can go to image range and select the options box for image range. And then we can change this to -2, and then I'm going to do +2, which is just 2, and then apply that. And what we see now is it shows us our image on more of our UV sets here. So what I can do is grab this and move this over here. We have a little bit more room to work with. So if we grab the bottom UVs here, we can zoom right in and get that pretty much spot on. When you're moving UVs like this, try to scale them as close as possible. So get your piece, so if it's like this, get it in the middle as much as you can, and then scale it evenly up so that you're reducing the stretching as much as possible. Because if you just went like that and line the bottom up, and then grab the top UVs, then what you'd actually get is all this section here will be stretched because you're breaking it away from its original proportions. So just try to scale it as close as you can first before then finally tweaking those UVs into place. Now this is an endlessly tileable section here, so there'll be no seams on the side and this can go anywhere it wants. So we come back into our scene here. You can now see we've got a bevel at the top and bevel at the bottom. So then we just need to get that middle bit in place. Now we don't need any edges lining up for this, so all we need to do is grab this and just place it over the top of a chrome piece. So again, let's see if we've got a chrome piece big enough. Put it down on here. And then I want the next section to be all dark metal. So I want this split up into some panels. And we've got a dark metal panel here. So if we just have a look at our normal map again, we can see we've not actually put a bevel on that yet. So we should probably do that so we can see the edges. So you can see there is a panel here, but because we've not put a bevel on it, it's pretty much invisible when it comes to the normal map. We can just see the colour in here. So for now, I'm just going to line it up with this, but then I might come back into that and add the bevel. In fact, I definitely will. So I'm just going to grab these front faces here first of all and go find these in here and then go create UV shell, shift right click. And then again, we can actually do normal based on this, and then we want to set it to the right texel density again. And then we can line this up, and I might stretch this a little bit actually. So even if I do stretch it now, if it doesn't work out or if I'm getting too much stretching, I can come back and adjust it later on. That's no problem at all. So I like to do just like maybe 1 pixel or 2 pixels in from the actual complete edge. Sometimes, especially when the piece next door is very different, like we've got here, just to help with any possible bleed. But we can just snap them to the grid as well if it does lie on a grid like this top piece. So we can go X and we can snap that into that grid there. And then these pieces, let's just create normal based here. Create normal base, that will also automatically snap it off. And we can set the resolution to this as well. Make sure it's close as possible. So we could put this over the top here. Actually, what I might do is put a cut along here. So if we just select just this object and isolate it again. Now I want to put a cut across to add some extra detail to this. So I'm going to grab these edges here and connect. And then I want to move these up, but I want to move them along the edges. So if we just go to our tools, we can turn on transform constraint and go to edge, or we can shift control, right click, and go to transform constraints and go on edge slide, and that'll allow us to just slide this up and down. So I want to put this somewhere like here, and then I'm going to just go to cut and clean this up, make sure there's no end-ons, and I'm going to select these top faces here, shift right click, create UV shell, and I'm going to move this UV shell, and you can get selected UV shell either by going to UV shell like that, or you can just double click the UV, one of the UVs, and you can move that there. Now slide constraint is on, so you can see I can't move this around properly because it works in the UVs as well. So I just need to control right click, shift control right click, transform constraints, and turn that off, and that'll allow me to move that now. And what I want to do is just realign this back up here, and that'll give me an edge there, and I want to edge down at the bottom here actually. So we will actually get that off this panel because this panel is still going to be aligned with the top. So we can select that UV shell. I'll just select the faces in here. Or if we go to UV shell in here, we can actually select the UV shell in the main window. I just want to slide this back up so that this also gets an edge from the top. And I can select all these UVs at the top here and just align them all up so it's all nice and aligned. So then we've got these two UV shells overlapping each other, but they should have a nice result there. Okay, so the next bit is here. I want to take these ones and I'm going to take them right around the edge here. And I'm going to go create camera based. Let's move it off so I can see what I'm working on here. And then I'm going to unfold and orientate this. And it's orientated too far over, so what I'm going to do is just come to rotate here and just click that one to rotate it back. And we can see it's not perfectly straight, so again I'm going to straighten UVs, and fortunately it's not touched that angle, it's just left that as is, but it's straight in the border there. So now I can bring this back here and I can put it over another dark piece. And we can set the size of this, but we don't really have a piece that fits. Actually, maybe it'll look pretty good on there. Have them ridges underneath, that'll actually look pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is just scale that just a little tiny bit and get those ridges on that middle bit. So I just want to make sure this is aligned as best as possible. So we can go back into the normal map here. What we can see is actually we don't have a beveled edge on this, so it really doesn't matter. I just don't want to take it too far that way. I do want a bit of an edge. Okay, and I'm actually going to grab these inner faces here and go create UV shell. I'm going to take these and put them somewhere else. So that's nice and neatly aligned, and we can see that in scene there. Now we've got a little bit detail on the front. That's really nice. And we can take these two, maybe stack them, and let's put them over on another panel piece. So again, let's jump back to colour and see what we can find. We definitely need, from what I can see in this, we definitely need some more smaller panels for the black and for the others as well. Because there's nothing that quite fits. I think one that big would just be perfect. And coloured panel, some more options in coloured panels here as well would be ideal, I think. For now, I'm just going to place this over here. And I think I'm going to make, so at this point, you know, as I've been starting to work through here, I'm getting a better idea of what I need and what I don't need. So at this point, I'm going to come back to my trim sheet. I'm going to just add some additions to it. What we do need, I think, is some of this black panels breaking up. So all I'm doing here is just shrinking down that big black section and making a few smaller alternatives. So it turns out that on this machine I didn't really have that much black metal on there, so these big sections don't really help, and a few smaller little pieces will just give me a few more options to pick from and make this a little bit more flexible. Now these are still just panels or pieces that have no detail on them. You could definitely start to make some that have some more interesting detail on them at this point. So I'm going to leave it at that for that one, and we want to make a bigger panel here. So I don't think we need this massive panel endlessly scrolling here. So I'm going to just make that half the size, or maybe just that size, you know, just a little over halfway, and change it from endlessly scrolling as well. And then if I duplicate this, put that there, make myself a couple more panel options here. Okay, and I'll leave that for now, and if we just again export this, so we've not done anything too fancy here, but if we export this high poly again into the high, yep, go back to our substance painter window, texture set settings, bake mesh maps, we bake all of them this time. We should see this update, and because we've used the colors and we've not changed the colors, and we've set the layer masks to colors to the ID mask, that means as the ID mask updates along with our new panels, as long as the colors are still the same, then we shouldn't have to do anything else to this to get a perfect update. We'll only need to start doing some more work when we start to paint custom masks into here, because obviously they won't update when we change something in an external program. So as you can see, that's updated nicely. We've got now more options here to use in our panels. So we can go back to export textures, make sure that's coming out correctly, yep, export those, and that should save those textures over our old ones. So then if we come back in here again, so we can see that's updated nicely. So we click on our VM machine now, we can see if we switch to color, we've got our nice updates here. Now there's still a couple of little things I want to do actually. I want to make sure that this has a beveled edge, and so this one as well. But first I'm actually going to make an adjustment to this panel as well. So we'll just do one more quick bake of this. So I'm just going to make this one a bit smaller. Make sure it's snapped to the grid. I'm going to make this one a bit smaller. And I'm going to duplicate this one. Make sure that's snapped there. It is. Grab the verts. Snap them there. And then I want to make sure this is beveled because we can't see the panel lines at the moment. So again, Control F10. Bevel. Get this a nice small bevel. Try and match the others. And this one as well. So one more time, let's export this. File, export selection, high poly. Make sure you've not grabbed the back face there, the trim sheet. Back into Substance Painter. Bake them new mesh maps. Now we've got the bevels on there and we've got this extra panel here as well. So yeah, getting used to just doing rapid iterations like this is really the best way to go about, because you can really kind of home in on what you need from your trim sheet. And then once you've got this and your trim sheet starts to work and you're in the flow with it, you can just start producing loads and loads of models and you don't have to come back to this stage then. Okay, so once you've got that, you can export them textures back out over the top of the other ones. Just make sure they're in the right place and the exports are correct, and export them out. And then back in Maya, we can now see we've got our updated panel lines and we've got bevels where we want them as well. So what I'm going to do is take this UV island here. I'm just going to rotate it, and actually I prefer to use this rotation here. And then I'm going to just scale it a little bit so it fits in with this. Now this one will have to be warped just a little bit, but that's kind of inevitable when you're using trim sheets fully like this for all your panels. And then I'm going to just select them all and then just scale it this way so it scales evenly across the whole face. Now that's the full panel line there because there's nothing next to it, so we can go all the way to the edge. Just check it over. Yep, that looks pretty neat. Let's have a little look what it looks like in window. Yeah, that's pretty good. So we've got panel loops now around the whole of that. That one wraps around, which is fine. Panel loop there. Let's see what else we've got. I'm going to leave. No, we need to update this because we've made this smaller here. So we can just grab these UVs here and just scale them in a little bit. Doesn't matter if these ones are all that stretched because they are hidden mainly behind the monitor. And then we've got that piece there, so now we can work on this top piece. So I want this whole front face to be one panel. So a good way of selecting faces really fast is if you just go press Q on the keyboard to get to the selection tool, and then if you hold tab, you can just draw over those faces and select them. Need to make sure that we've definitely got all of them. And you want to make sure you've got no back faces as well. If you just go to wireframe mode and look around, or hit W on the keyboard, and if that pivot point seems to be exactly in the front and it's not like over here, then you most likely have the correct ones selected. So with this selected here, we can come back to create and go to normal based again, and let's set that closer to the texel density we need. Now let's jump over to the base color so we can see where we want to place this, and this again is the black stuff, so somewhere on here. So if we jump back to normals, we can find something that should fit. Looks like this will do. I just need to scale it up a little bit. And again, we just want to set them bevels. Okay. So again, let's just get these back faces mapped off first. So I'm going to go create camera based, unfold that, orient it, rotate it the correct direction, straighten the UVs, make sure it's all neat, and then we're going to hover this over an area that fits. So we need something quite big. Oh, we should also set the density of this as well. And I think it'll fit here nicely. So let's go back to the normal map. Yep, that looks good. Scale that right. And just to add, so we can see here actually, we've got a panel loop in the middle here, which is something I don't want. So if we just go to UV shells and select that one and find it, we can see that it's actually running over that panel line there. So what we can do is, let's have a little look at our trim sheet. Yeah. What we can do is actually just scale that down and use a smaller piece. I don't think it'll be matter for the type of material it is. So let's put that here. Might just get some slightly different sizes in the panel lines, but other than that it should be okay. And I'm actually going to snap this front face off. Oh, it's stuck behind there, so let's go back to our window here. I'm going to select these front faces here, and I'm going to make this a separate panel so it looks like maybe a little access hatch. So we can go shift right click, create UV shell, and then we can move that somewhere else. So if I put it here, rotate it this way, scale it, fit it into this. Now we have a little panel in there that looks like it's being modelled in. Just need to make sure it's not going too far this way, because you can see a little bit of white appearing there from the next door neighbour. Look at that, see? Looks like some modelled work there, and we didn't actually have to model anything, it's just mapped to one of the faces. Now let's do the same with the top. So I'm going to select one, and then double click the neighbour to do the ring, create, say we'll do normal based, so we've got it at the top here, and then we need to open this up. So what I'm going to do is grab this face here, and I'm going to rotate it that way. I'm going to grab this face and rotate it that way, and then I'm going to grab all the UVs on the inside here, so we can straighten the UVs, optimize them. So let's just go like that, let's line them up as best we can, and then we'll straighten the UVs and then click optimize. Yeah, I think what's best here is to actually cut these open. Doesn't really like these squares, so if we cut them and move that up, optimize and straighten, that should do. And again, straighten, optimize, straighten, optimize, straighten, optimize, straighten, and then I'm going to grab these UVs here and just straighten them as well. And then I'm going to go shift right click, and I'm going to go move and show edges, shift right click, move and show edges, and then again I'm just going to do a straighten on the whole thing. So now that's about as straight as we can get. So you will get warping around here, but what this allows us to do, so you can see there, it allows us to then pick that and put that on a panel line. So we could even run the bevel around the whole top of this that we did earlier. And it'll look pretty straight. You'll get a little bit of warping around here, so you've got to be careful not to put the details too close to them edges. So this is where we'll get the problems when we come to doing trim sheets. You know, when you start to straighten things out and move them too far away from the natural relaxed position, you can start to get this kind of warped effect, especially if you want to run stuff around a corner. So what we could do is just leave them snapped off. So if we come back to these edges here and cut, and then go to this UV shell and optimize, and orient, we'll get a much straighter line there. It's just making sure that these two line up correctly here. So again, if we go to the other side, so really you need to try one thing, try and keep stuff together, and if it doesn't work, then you can start to try and figure out where you can kind of alleviate some of that twisting. Actually, I'm going to put this over a chrome piece. So I just need to find that on my sheet. Yeah, I've got it, bob on. So I just need to make sure that the top and bottom of these are perfectly accurate on all these shells. And then I can align them up with that bevel. So now we have a nice chrome strip running around the edge of that as well, and it matches some of the other details on this model. And what we could do later on is just run a seam around there as well, so we can get that bevel detail. And so, actually I want this wrapping round the corner here. So what I'm going to do is grab this, create normal based, set that, where is it? There we go. And then what I want to do is stitch this to the other piece. So if we go like this, I'm going to move these other pieces, unwrap pieces, out of the way. Sew them to there, and just make sure them UVs are locked in. So I think I'll move this down to this piece. Just have a bevel on the top and bottom. Oh, actually, I think maybe over here would be a little bit better. Okay then, so I've got a nice folded metal there rather than a panel loop on every single face. So what else have we got left here? We've got the inner shell of this, so that's pretty easy, we don't need to be too neat with that. So we just cut the one of the edges on that and unfold it and orient it. Oh, we've got the base as well, so we'll just snap that off, create UV shell. So let's unfold this again and let's orient it. Optimize that. Yeah, okay, that's nice and neat. So we'll just place this alongside one of the other ones. If we got here, it should do there. Nothing special. And unfold that, orient, and we can just put that on one of these. We don't need to show that off, we're not going to be able to see it. What else? So we've got the back side of this now. So again, this will be all dark metal, so I'll snap that off separately, create UV shell, unfold it, let's orient, just line that up to one of the panel loops, the black ones. Be fine here. It's not a piece that's very easily seen, so we can just roughly line that up there. Okay, and same for this back piece as well. So unfold, orient, Just line that up with a black panel. Now I'm being quite quick with this. You know, if you want a piece on your portfolio, then you're going to have to be a little bit more careful with how you do it. I've got a panel loop down here. That'll be all right. I think that'll just add an extra detail there. Okay, now we can do the outer shell. So I think that inner shell is pretty much done. It looks pretty neat. Probably just need to apply some chrome to this. Let's see. Let's just delete, if we got an inner face on that, solo that, delete that inner face because we don't need it. And then let's grab that face and that face. Now we need to cut these up because they've got quite a lot of n-gons on here. So before we do anything, let's just make sure that is nice and neat. Connect. Connect. Alright, then let's select that top edge. Let's unfold that, orient. And you know, you can be really careful and place this. For now, I'm just going to place this just over a bit of chrome. I'm not really bothered about being really neat with this. So I just want to get this done. Let's just get this on some chrome. And the next stage is to get the glass monitor and the outer walls UV'd.